Welcome, Midnight Creed, like and subscribe. Chapter 1. The Woman at the Door. The woman arrived at 9:17 on a Thursday evening with rain on her coat, fear in her eyes, and a man behind her whom nobody had seen. Fritz opened the door. I was in the office pretending to sort correspondence, while Wolf was reading a book on orchid pollination and objecting silently to the weather. Rain had been hitting the front windows for 2 hours, turning West 35th Street into a black ribbon of reflected lamps and impatient taxis. Fritz appeared at the office door. "A woman wishes to see you, Archie. She says it is urgent." "Does she say what kind of urgent?" "She says a man has followed her for 6 days." Wolf did not look up. "Police," he said. "She refuses to go to the police. Then she may continue being followed." Fritz waited. That meant there was more. I got up. "Where is she?" "In the front room." The woman stood beside the sofa with both hands gripping a wet handbag. She was in her early 30s, dark-haired, well-dressed, and trying hard not to tremble. Her coat was grey wool, expensive without advertising the fact. Water had darkened the shoulders. "My name is Helen Ward," she said. "I need Nero Wolf." Most people do after trying cheaper methods. "I'm Archie Goodwin." She glanced toward the front door. "Is it locked?" "Yes." "Bolted?" "It can be." "Please." I slid the bolt. She breathed out, but not enough. "Who is following you?" "I don't know. Man or woman?" "A man. Description." "That is the problem." "Start with height." I never saw him clearly. "Clothes?" "A dark overcoat, dark hat." "Face?" "No." "Age?" "I don't know." "Then how do you know it is the same man?" She looked at me as if I had asked why rain was wet. "Because he is always there." I took her into the office. Wolf lowered his book when she entered, though only by an inch. Helen stopped when she saw him. Wolf in his chair has discouraged stronger people. His size, his stillness, and his habit of waiting for others to become uncomfortable can make a visitor feel guilty before speaking. She sat in the red leather chair. I returned to my desk. Wolf said, "You are being followed." "Yes." "For 6 days?" "Yes." "By a man you cannot describe?" Helen swallowed. "I can describe where I see him. That may be more useful." She looked at me, then back at Wolf. "The first time was Friday morning. I was leaving my apartment on East 68th Street. Across the road, near the construction fence, a man stood under a black umbrella. I noticed him because he was not moving with the crowd." "Did you see his face?" Wolf asked. "No. The umbrella hid it." "Then?" "That afternoon I saw him reflected in a shop window on Madison Avenue. I turned, but he had crossed the street." "Same coat?" "Yes." "Same hat?" "I think so. You think?" "The hat was dark. Everything about him is dark." Wolf's lips tightened. Helen continued. "Saturday, I saw him in the lobby of the Carlton Hotel. Sunday, outside my building. Monday, behind me in a taxi mirror. Tuesday, across from the restaurant where I had lunch. Yesterday, in the glass doors of my office." "What office?" "Ward and Latham Fine Art." "You are an owner." "My father founded it. I manage. Private sales, valuable objects, paintings, manuscripts, some jewelry. Enemies? No. Disputes? Every business has disputes. Threats? None." I asked, "Did you tell your doorman?" "Yes." He saw no one. "Hotel staff?" "Yes." "Taxi driver?" He said there had been no car following us. "Your office guards?" "They checked the lobby cameras. No man matching my description appears." Wolf shifted in his chair. "Then either the man is unusually skilled or unusually imaginary." Helen went pale. "I am not imagining him." "I did not say you were. You meant it." "I meant that your evidence permits the possibility." She opened her handbag with unsteady fingers and took out a folded card. "This was under my apartment door this morning." I carried it to Wolf. The card was plain white, cut by hand. One sentence had been typed in the center. "Stop looking behind you." No signature. Wolf examined it. "Did you touch it?" "Yes." "Anyone else?" "My maid." Envelope? None. Your building has a doorman? Day and night. Service. Entrance? Locked after 10. Could another resident have slipped it under the door? Yes. Could a servant? Yes. Could you? Helen's chin lifted. No. Wolf returned the card to me. Why have you come here instead of to the police? My father knew Inspector Kramer years ago. I telephoned him. He said that without a description, witness, or direct threat, the police could do little. That is accurate. He also said that if I believed the man was real, I should come to you. Wolf frowned. Mr. Kramer is becoming careless with my time. Helen leaned forward. Please. I am not a nervous woman. I travel alone. I negotiate with difficult people. I have been threatened over paintings worth more than this house. This is different. Wolf's eyes narrowed. How? The man never approaches. He never speaks. He only lets me see him. That may be the intention. You believe me? I believe that you believe yourself. She sat back, disappointed. I had been watching the hem of her coat. There was pale grit clinging to the damp wool near her left calf. Not city mud. It was coarse, grey and flecked with reddish powder. I got up and crossed to her. May I look at your coat? She stared. Why? Because it came here, too. She stood. I pinched a few grains from the hem and placed them on a sheet of paper. Wolf looked annoyed. Archie? Construction grit. Crushed brick, cement dust, probably plaster. Helen said, there is construction opposite my apartment. I know. You mentioned the fence. She looked down at the coat. I said, this is damp grit, not dust blown across the street. You brushed against something wet at the site. I did not. Did you cross the road tonight? No. Yesterday? No. Do you use? The subway entrance beside the site. Never. Parking garage. My car is kept underground in my building. I rubbed the grit between my fingers. It is fresh. The rain turned it into paste. Wolf said, what do you conclude? That. She was close enough to the construction site tonight to pick it up. Helen's face tightened. I came directly from my office. Route. My driver brought me. Did you get out anywhere? No. Did the car stop near the site? At my apartment. I went upstairs, changed my shoes and came here. Which entrance? Front. The construction is opposite? Yes. Did you cross to it? No. I looked at Wolf. There are two ways this grit reached her coat. She went near the site, or someone who had been there touched her. Helen's hands moved to the sides of the coat. The man. Maybe. Tonight, when I left my building, someone bumped into me. Who? I don't know. A man opened, an umbrella close beside me. I turned, but a taxi blocked the view. Dark overcoat? Yes. That improved the situation. Wolf said, did he touch your left side? I think so. The grit is on the left hem, I said. Helen looked toward the bolted front door again. He followed me here. Did your driver see him? No. You came by taxi? Yes. I sent my driver home. Why? I thought a different car might lose him. Wolf closed his book and placed it on the desk. That was progress. He said, why would anyone follow you so visibly while remaining unseen by everyone else? I don't know. Who benefits from frightening you? No one. Who benefits if others consider you frightened without cause? Helen stared. Wolf continued, you manage valuable private sales. Does your judgment affect ownership, authentication, or payment? Yes. Are you currently handling a disputed object? She hesitated. Yes. What object? A small portrait attributed to Elias Vane. Value? If authentic, nearly $2 million. If false, a few thousand. Who owns it? Martin Gresham, a private collector. Who wishes to buy it? I cannot say. You came seeking my help while withholding relevant information. It is confidential. So am I. She lowered her eyes. The buyer is Andrew Latham, My business partner. I said, Your partner wants to buy a painting through his own firm? Privately. He believes it is genuine. And you? I believe it is a clever forgery. Wolf's fingers met over his middle. When must the decision be made? Tomorrow. What decision? Whether our gallery issues a certificate of authenticity. Your signature required? Yes. And if you refuse? The sale collapses. Who loses money? Gresham, Latham, 2 investors. Who gains if you appear mentally unstable? Her face changed. My opinion could be challenged. By whom? Latham could ask the board to remove me from the authentication committee, so someone may not need to harm you, only to make your fear public. Helen looked from Wolf to me. The man is real. Possibly, Wolf said, but he may be performing for you alone. The office bell rang. Helen jerked so hard the handbag slipped from her lap. I stood. That is the front door, not the end of civilization. Fritz appeared before I reached the hall. He was not alarmed, but his eyebrows had risen slightly. No, one is there, he said. You opened? Yes. Street? Empty, Helen whispered. He is outside. I went to the front window and looked through the side of the curtain. Rain crossed the street in silver lines. A taxi moved past. The construction site opposite the next block was only a dark gap between buildings. No man. I returned to the office. Wolf said, Who rang? No one willing to introduce himself. Fritz remained at the door. There is something else, he said. Wolf looked at him. This afternoon at about 4, I found a dark overcoat hanging beside the front door. I stared. What overcoat? One that did not belong to you, Mr. Wolf, Archie, Theodore, or me. What did you do with it? I placed it in the basement closet. I assumed a delivery man had left it. Did anyone enter the house? A man delivered wine at 3:40. A florist came at 3:55. No one else. Did either wear an overcoat? The florist did. Brown. And the wine man? A short jacket. Helen had gone motionless. Wolf said, Bring it. Fritz returned carrying a long black overcoat. It was plain, heavy, and wet along the lower edge, though it had been inside for hours. No label. No initials. The pockets were empty, except for a small quantity of grey and red grit, the same grit as Helen's coat. I placed the 2 samples side by side. Helen whispered, That is his. You have never seen it closely, I said. I know. Wolf regarded the coat. Archie examined the front door. I went to the hall. The bolt was still in place. The lock showed no damage. But beside the umbrella stand, close to the baseboard, was a thin smear of wet construction dust. Fresh. Someone had been inside after the coat was first found, or had reached through far enough to disturb the floor. I returned. The grit is in the hall too. Helen stood. I cannot go home. You may remain here tonight, Wolf said. She looked surprised. So you will take the case? I will investigate the coat. And the man? If he exists, he has entered my house without permission. That converts your difficulty into mine. Wolf pressed the desk bell. Fritz appeared. Prepare the south guest room. Yes, sir. Helen's shoulders dropped for the first time. Wolf looked at me. Archie, telephone Saul Panzer. He will watch Miss Ward's building, then call Inspector Kramer and ask who owns the construction property opposite it. At this hour, he introduced her to us. Helen said, What do you think is happening? Wolf glanced at the overcoat. Someone wishes you to believe that a man follows you. Someone also wishes us to believe he has been here. Why? That is not yet clear. He lifted one finger. But the coat presents a difficulty. A pursuer who avoids every witness does not leave his garment in a detective's hall by accident. Said, Then it was planted. Certainly. To frighten Helen? Perhaps. Or to lead us somewhere. Wolf looked toward the dark front hall. Yes. Helen sat again, pale but steadier. Outside, rain moved over the city. Across Manhattan, Hotel mirrors, shop windows, taxi glass, and apartment doors had reflected a man no one else could remember. Now his coat hung in Wolf's office. A man without a face had finally left evidence. The trouble was that he had left it before Helen Ward ever came to our door. Chapter 2. The Man. No one remembered. A man who follows a woman for 6 days should leave one of 3 things behind: a witness, a footprint, or a mistake. Helen Ward's man had left an overcoat in our hall before she arrived, which was not a mistake. It was an announcement. At 10 the next morning, Helen sat in the office with a cup of coffee she had barely touched while Wolf finished the inspection of his mail. She had slept in the south guest room, though Fritz reported that the bed showed more disturbance than rest. The black overcoat hung from a stand near my desk. In daylight, it looked less sinister and more expensive. The wool was heavy, the stitching good, and the cut designed for a tall, thin man. It had no maker's label, but someone had removed one recently. 4 loose threads remained inside the collar. Wolf placed the final letter aside. Describe the man again. Helen drew the coffee cup closer. He is tall, at least 6 feet. Thin? Yes. Yesterday you described his clothes as dark. They are grey. Dark grey. Always. I think so. You think too frequently. Her mouth tightened. I never saw him in full light. Then report only what you observed. She took a breath. Long grey coat. Grey hat with a narrow brim. His shoulders are slightly bent. He holds his head forward. Face? Pale. Eyes? I never saw them. Hair? No. Hands? Once, in the hotel lobby. Gloves? Grey gloves. Said, a man who dresses entirely in grey is either making a statement or applying for work as fog. Helen ignored me. Wolf asked, at what distance did you see him most clearly? Perhaps 20 feet. Where? In the Carlton Hotel. Directly, she hesitated, in a mirror beside the elevators. Other sightings? The shop window was a reflection. The taxi mirror, too. At my office, I saw him in the glass doors. And outside your apartment, across the street, through my window, through glass again. Yes. Have you ever seen him without glass between you? Helen looked toward the overcoat. Last night, when someone struck my side, with an umbrella. Did you see his body? Only part of the coat. Directly? In a taxi window. Wolf's lips pressed together. I said, so every complete sighting was reflected. She turned to me. That does not make him imaginary. No, it makes him portable. What does that mean? It means a reflection can be placed where a man is not. Wolf shot me a look. I had stepped onto his territory before he had finished measuring it. He addressed Helen. Your apartment faces the construction site? Yes. Floor? 4th? Fire escape? At the rear. Windows facing the street? Living room and bedroom. Could someone enter while you were away? My maid has a key. The building superintendent has one for emergencies. My partner has an old key, though I asked him to return it last year. Andrew Latham? Yes. Why did he retain it? He claimed he had misplaced it. Wolf made a low sound. Archie will inspect the apartment. Helen looked at me. Now? After breakfast, I said. It is nearly 11. My breakfast keeps business hours. Wolf said, take the overcoat. Why? The grit links it to the construction site. Compare the material. I stood. Helen did too. You are coming with me, I asked. I am not staying here alone. You would have Wolf, Fritz, Theodore, and 10,000 orchids. That is not reassuring. Wolf's brows rose. I got our coats. Before leaving, I folded the grey overcoat into a large paper garment bag. Helen watched me seal it as if the man might object. The rain had stopped, but New York was still wet. Water dripped from awnings, tires whispered over the pavement, and the morning sky had the color of old dishwater. Helen's apartment building on East 68th Street was 9 stories of pale stone, brass trim, and carefully managed silence. The doorman knew her and did not know me, but my face and Helen's impatience got us through. His name was George Bell. He was 60, upright, and proud of remembering everyone who crossed his lobby. I showed him the description. Tall, thin, grey coat, grey hat. Has such a man been hanging around? No, sir. 6 days? No. Could he stand across the street near the construction fence? Anyone could, but I watched that side because trucks block the entrance. Did you see anyone follow? Miss Ward last night? No. She entered at 7:12, left again at 8:40. Alone? Yes. Did anyone bump into her? Bell frowned. A man opened an umbrella near the curb. I could not see him clearly because a cab pulled up. Grey coat? Maybe. Face? No. Did he enter the building? No. Could someone enter through the service door? Not without the porter seeing. Who has keys to Miss Ward's apartment? Miss Ward, her maid, the superintendent, and perhaps Mr. Latham. Helen said, he does not have permission. Bell looked embarrassed. I asked, has Latham visited this week? Monday evening. Helen turned. He did not tell me. What time? About 6. He said he was leaving papers. Did you call upstairs? No. Mr. Latham has always been admitted. Helen's face cooled. Not anymore. Bell nodded. We took the elevator to the 4th floor. Helen's apartment had pale walls, modern furniture, several paintings that looked expensive enough to need lawyers, and windows facing the construction site. Across the street, steel beams rose behind green boards. Workers moved between piles of brick and wet cement. I went to the living room window. The watcher's usual position, according to Helen, was near a gap between 2 advertising panels. From the apartment, I could see the gap clearly. I could also see the large sheet of polished metal fixed to the side of a temporary construction office. It reflected part of the street like a poor mirror. Did you ever see the man there directly? I asked. Helen stood beside me. I saw him through this window. That is still through glass. He was beside the fence, or reflected in the metal panel. She stared across the street. The panel caught passing cars, pedestrians, and fragments of buildings at an angle. A figure standing 20 feet farther down could appear near the fence when seen from Helen's window. I made a note. Where was the man when you saw him Sunday? Near that opening. What were the lights like? Late afternoon. The sun was low. Reflections would be strongest. You think someone used the panel? I think somebody understood it. We inspected the windows. Both locks were secure. The frames were dusty, but undisturbed. No marks outside. The fire escape was at the rear, beyond the bedroom. I opened the window and climbed out. The metal steps were wet. A thin layer of soot and city grit covered the platform. If a tall, thin man had waited there, he should have left prints. There were none. No shoe marks, no scraped dirt. No disturbed water except where my own soles landed. Near the railing lay a cigarette end. It was white, clean, and placed neatly beside the wall. I did not touch it with my fingers. Helen leaned out. I found one like that Monday. Where? On the front windowsill. You threw it away? Yes. Do you smoke? No. Your maid? No. Latham? He stopped years ago. I used an envelope to collect the cigarette. It looked unfinished, about 2 inches long, with a tan filter and an unburned paper edge. I smelled it. No tobacco smoke. I broke the paper carefully. The tobacco inside was dry and untouched. There was no ash, no scorched paper, and no darkening at the tip. It was never lit, I said. Helen frowned. Then why leave it? To suggest someone stood here smoking. But there are no footprints. Exactly. On the outside paper near the filter was a faint glossy patch. I scraped it with the edge of my knife. It came away in a thin, clear flake, not wax, not ordinary glue. I had seen something like it on stage props used in an old theatre case. Adhesive. strong enough to fix a light object temporarily to glass, metal, or painted wood. I put the flake in a separate fold of paper. Someone stuck the cigarette here. Helen looked from the clean platform to the unburned cigarette. So the man was never on the fire escape, not while leaving that. We searched the rest of the apartment. Nothing had been stolen. Nothing appeared disturbed. The paintings were secure, the desk locked, and Helen's authentication papers remained inside a steel filing cabinet. In the bedroom, I found a narrow grey thread caught on the inner edge of the closet door. Helen watched me remove it. From the coat? Maybe. Then he was here. Or the coat was. The closet contained dresses, shoes, 2 suitcases, and a full-length mirror fixed to the inside of the door. When the door stood partly open, the mirror reflected the living room windows and part of the street. I shifted it. A person standing in the apartment hallway could make a reflected figure appear behind Helen while she faced the windows. "Who uses this closet?" I asked. "Only me." "Has the mirror always been angled this way?" She studied it. "No. The door used to open farther. A small rubber wedge had been inserted near the lower hinge, preventing the door from opening completely. It looked new. I removed it. The mirror swung 5 inches wider, losing the angle toward the street. Helen went pale. Someone changed it. Yes. To make me see him? Possibly. I stood where she said she had been when she first noticed a grey figure inside the apartment reflection. With the wedge in place, anyone in the hall wearing the planted coat would appear behind her in the mirror while remaining outside her direct line of sight. The performance was moving indoors. I telephoned the brownstone. Wolf answered. "The cigarette was never smoked," I said. "It was attached to the fire escape with clear theatrical adhesive. No footprints. There is a new wedge altering the closet mirror's angle. Grey thread on the inner door." Who had access? Latham visited. Monday. The maid and superintendent have keys. The coat? Fits the thread in color. Not enough for certainty. Bring the cigarette, adhesive, wedge, and thread. Helen too? Certainly. I hung up. Helen stood near the window. Do you know who is doing this? No. But you believe someone is? Yes. She gave a small laugh without humor. That should make me feel better. It rarely does. Before leaving, I crossed the street to inspect the construction site. The foreman objected until I mentioned police, lawsuits, and a rich neighbor in the same sentence. Then he gave me 10 minutes. The grit beside the temporary office matched what we had found on Helen's coat and in the overcoat pockets. Crushed red brick, grey cement powder, white plaster. The polished metal panel had been installed a week. Earlier, exactly when Helen's watcher first appeared, a worker named Eddie Ross told me someone had been visiting the site after hours. Tall fellow? I asked. Never saw him clear. Grey coat? He carried one. Carried? Folded over his arm. He came Monday with a clipboard and said he was from the property company. Did he give a name? Mr. Larkin. Description? Medium height. Brown hair. Maybe 40. Wore a blue suit. Not tall and thin? No. What did he do? Measured sightlines. I looked at the reflective panel. He called them lighting angles, Ross added. Did he enter the temporary office? Yes. Did he take anything? Not that I know. Leave anything, Ross thought. A roll of clear mounting adhesive was missing afterward. We use it to attach safety notices. That was enough for one morning. We returned to the brownstone shortly after 1. Wolf was finishing lunch. He refused to discuss the case until he had completed a plate of lamb kidneys with onions, 2 spoonfuls of rice, and a pear that Fritz had poached in spiced syrup. Helen sat in the office while I arranged the evidence on my desk. The unburned cigarette, the adhesive flake, the rubber wedge, the grey thread, samples of construction grit. Wolf entered at 1:45 and settled behind his desk report. I gave it to him from Bell's lobby statement through the construction workers' account. I included Latham's unannounced visit, the angled mirror, the spotless fire escape, and the man who had measured sight lines while carrying a grey coat. Wolf. listened with his eyes closed. When I finished, he asked Helen, "Where did you see the watcher in the hotel lobby?" "In the large mirror beside the elevators." "Could a person enter the service corridor behind it?" "There is a side passage. The shop window." It reflected the street. "The office glass doors?" "Yes." "The taxi?" "Rear mirror." Wolf opened his eyes. "You have not seen a pursuer. You have seen an image." Helen stared at him. "The image had to belong to someone." "Certainly, but not necessarily to a man following you." I said, "Someone could wear the coat briefly, position himself for a reflection, then remove it before any witness looked." "Yes." "Or hang the coat on a support." "Yes." Helen looked alarmed. "A support? A narrow frame, perhaps? In poor light, behind glass, shoulders and a hat would be enough." She turned toward the overcoat. Wolf said, "The cigarette was planted to imply physical presence where none existed. The mirror was adjusted to control what you saw inside your own apartment. The construction panel supplied an outdoor reflection. The hotel, taxi, shop and office provided other surfaces. So the man is not real. The performance is real." "Who is performing it?" "Someone close enough to know your movements, your rooms, your habits, and the particular angles from which you look." Helen's hands tightened. "Andrew?" "Possibly." "My maid?" "Possibly." "The superintendent?" "Possibly." "You are not helping." "I am limiting error." Wolf examined the cigarette through a magnifying glass. "This adhesive is used in theaters, display rooms, galleries, and construction work." "Our gallery uses it," Helen said. "For what?" "Temporary labels and lighting guides. Who has access? Everyone on staff. That enlarges the field." I said, "The watcher is being staged closer than Helen thinks." Wolf nodded. "Much closer. The person need not follow her through the city. He must only know where she will look." Helen said, "How could anyone know that?" "Because fear trains the eye. After the first sighting, you began searching reflective surfaces. The performer merely supplied an image where you expected one. The idea chilled the room more effectively than the rain had. I said, the first sighting created the habit. After that, Helen did half the work." "Precisely." Helen looked toward the front windows. "Then the coat in your hall?" Wolf's expression darkened. "That was not staged for you alone." "For whom?" "For me." She blinked. Wolf continued, "Someone knew you would come here, or intended to drive you here. The overcoat was planted before your arrival, so we would accept the pursuer as a physical man." "How could they know I would choose you?" "You telephoned Inspector Kramer." "Yes." "Who knew?" "My secretary was in the room. Andrew entered while I was speaking. The gallery receptionist may have heard. Then the information was available. I looked at the coat. Why involve Wolf?" "Because Miss Ward's judgment regarding the painting must be discredited thoroughly. A private fear might be dismissed. A famous detective's investigation gives it weight." Helen stared at Wolf. "They want you to confirm I am being followed." "Or confirm that you are unstable." I said, "Either result can be used." Wolf leaned back. "The performance is not meant merely to frighten you. It is meant to produce a record of your fear." Helen sat very still. "The authentication meeting is tomorrow." "Yes. And if I arrive frightened, claiming a man, no one can find has followed me. Your partner may argue that your judgment is impaired." She looked toward the card on Wolf's desk. "Stop looking behind you." The note was part of it. "Yes." "The cigarette." "Yes." "The coat." "Yes." "And the man." Wolf's lips pushed out. "There may be several men. There may be none. What matters is the director." I gathered the evidence. "Tomorrow we visit the gallery." "Today," Helen looked up. Wolf said, "Archie will inspect every mirror, display case, lighting screen and service passage at Ward and Latham." "What will you do?" "I will speak with Mr. Latham." "Here?" "Certainly. Invite him for 6 o'clock." Helen hesitated. "He will know I came to you." "He already knows." That settled her. I telephoned the gallery. "Andrew Latham." accepted the invitation after asking 3 questions I did not answer. When I hung up, Wolf looked again at the unburned cigarette. "A false watcher leaves false traces," he said. "The danger is not outside Miss Ward's window." "Where is it?" "In the room where the performance is designed." Helen glanced at the angled mirror wedge. Wolf's eyes moved to her. "Someone near you has been arranging what you see, when you see it, and how others respond when you report it." He touched the white card with one finger. The man no one remembers is easy to explain. I waited. He was never meant to be remembered. Outside, the clouds had begun to break, and sunlight touched the wet city windows. For 6 days, Helen. Ward had searched every reflection for a tall, grey figure. Now we knew the watcher did not need to follow her. He only needed to reach the glass before she did. Chapter. 3 of the coat by the door Fritz remembered the visitor while polishing a silver serving tray. That was how important facts usually reached our office. Policemen brought them in folders, clients brought them in tiers, and Fritz found them while improving the household. It was a few minutes after 5. Helen Ward had gone upstairs to rest before Andrew Latham's scheduled arrival, and I had returned from inspecting her gallery with a notebook full of mirrors, glass cases, lighting screens, and people who had reasons to lie. Wolf was in the plant rooms, where the orchids received 2 hours of attention every afternoon and would have received the same during an earthquake. Fritz appeared at my desk carrying the tray. "Archie, I have remembered something. About the overcoat." I put down my pencil. "That sentence deserves a chair." He remained standing. "The coat did not appear without an owner. A man wore it when he came yesterday afternoon." I stared at him. "You told us you found it beside the front door." "Yes. I believed the man had taken it when he left. I did not connect the coat with him until I examined the loose button this morning." "Start over and include everything." Fritz placed the tray on the corner of my desk. "At 4 minutes before 4 yesterday, the bell rang. I opened the door. A man stood on the stoop wearing the dark coat. Description: about 40, medium height, thin face, brown hair. His manner was nervous. Tall? No. Grey clothes? His suit may have been grey. The coat was nearly black." "What did he want?" "He asked whether Miss Helen Ward had arrived." I stopped writing. "He used her name?" "Yes." "Had she telephoned us?" "No." "Had anyone told us she was coming?" "No." "Then how did he know she might?" "That troubled me, but he spoke as if an appointment had been made." "What exactly did he say?" Fritz considered. "Has Miss Ward reached the house yet?" "And you?" "I said no lady of—" "That name was expected." "What did he do?" He looked toward the hall mirror. Then he asked whether Mr. Wolf was available. "Did he give a name?" "No. When I requested one, he said it was unnecessary." "Did he enter?" "I allowed him into the hall because of the rain." "Where was his coat when he left?" "I thought he wore it." "You thought?" "He stood beside the coat stand. He lifted one arm as he turned." "I assumed he had taken the garment." "But he hadn't." "No." "What did he wear outside?" Fritz frowned. "A shorter coat, perhaps, or a jacket beneath the overcoat. I was distracted by the florist arriving. That explained how a man could leave one coat and still avoid walking into the rain in shirt sleeves." "How long was he inside?" "Less than 3 minutes." "Did he see Wolf?" "No." "Did he ask to?" "Only once. He seemed more interested in the mirror." "The mirror beside the front door?" "Yes." "What did he do with it?" "He stood facing the office door, but his eyes remained on the glass. He moved slightly from side to side, testing angles." "That is possible." "Did he touch it?" "I did not see him." "Did he carry anything?" "A narrow leather case." "How narrow?" "Perhaps 12 inches long and 2 inches wide." "Like a tool case?" "Possibly." "Did he open it?" "No." "Why did he leave?" "When the florist rang, he stepped toward the door. He said he had made a mistake and departed." "Did the florist see him?" "They passed on the stoop." "Name of florist?" "Replace Samuel Reed. He delivers for Harland Flowers." I reached for the phone. Fritz said, "There is another point." I waited. The stranger wore gloves, but one finger was torn. I saw a silver mark near his thumb. Ring? No, it appeared flat, like metal dust. That fitted the construction panel, the gallery equipment, or a dozen other useful occupations. I telephoned Harland Flowers. Thomas Reed was still making deliveries, but the manager gave me the address of his next stop. I sent Saul Panzer to find him. Then I took the abandoned coat from the stand. In daylight, under a strong lamp, it had already given us several facts. It was made for a tall man, though the visitor had been medium height. Construction grit remained in the pockets. The maker's label had been removed. A grey thread from Helen's closet might have come from its lining. Now I examined it with the stranger's leather case in mind. The outer pockets were empty. The inner breast pocket had been stitched partly closed. I had noticed the stitching before and assumed it was a repair. Assumption had again applied for employment without references. I used a small knife to cut 2 threads. My fingers touched something hard inside the lining. I opened the seam farther and pulled out a polished strip of metal. It was 11 inches long, less than 2 inches wide, and curved slightly along its length. One side was dull, the other was bright enough to serve as a narrow mirror. At each end was a small joint that allowed the strip to be bent at an angle. Fritz looked at it. That resembles part of a display fixture. Yes. I held it near the office window and moved it. A slice of my reflection appeared in the glass of the bookcase 6 feet away. When I tilted the strip, the reflected image shifted across the glass without my body moving into the same position. I tried again from beside the hall door. The metal caught my shoulder, part of my face, and the dark edge of my suit. On the hallway, mirror, the result looked like a person standing behind me, though no one occupied that part of the hall. Fritz crossed himself only with his eyebrows. The Watcher, he said. Part of him. The device was simple, but simplicity is often what makes a trick insulting. A narrow, polished surface could borrow the reflection of someone nearby and throw it across another pane of glass. Add poor light, a grey coat, a hat, and a frightened woman expecting pursuit, and the borrowed image became a man. Wolf returned from the plant rooms at 6 minutes past 6. He entered the office wearing his brown suit and a fresh yellow shirt. Theodore followed as far as the door, received an instruction about humidity, and withdrew. Wolf saw the metal strip on his desk. What is that? The man no one remembered. He scowled. Do not be theatrical. That is exactly what somebody else has been. I reported Fritz's visitor first, medium height, nervous, asked whether Helen had arrived, refused his name, watched the hallway mirror, carried a leather case, left the overcoat before Helen ever came to us. Then I demonstrated the polished strip. I stood near the office door, angled the device, and threw a partial reflection across the glass front of the bookcase. Wolf watched the image appear beside him. He turned his head and looked directly at me. Again. I changed the angle. This time the reflection crossed the dark front window, making it seem as if a thin figure stood behind the curtain. Wolf's lips pushed out. A crude instrument. It worked. Crudeness and effectiveness are not enemies. Fritz said, "The man appeared to know that Miss Ward would come." Wolf looked at him. "You are certain of his words?" "Yes, sir." "Has Miss Ward reached the house yet?" "Yes." "Not." "Has she telephoned?" "Not." "Is she expected?" "No, sir." Wolf leaned back. "Then her arrival was part of the design." I put the metal strip beside the unburned cigarette and mirror wedge. The coat was planted before Helen came. The stranger checked the hall mirror to make sure this device could produce the effect here too. Why? To make the Watcher appear inside your house. Yet Miss Ward did not see him here. Maybe she was supposed to. Or we were. I sat at my desk. Someone wanted us to discover the coat and accept that a physical man had followed her? Yes. But the coat contained the device that proves the man was artificial. Wolf's eyes narrowed. That is troublesome. Carelessness? No. You think it was meant to be found? Eventually. Then the person who planted it wanted us to expose the trick. Perhaps. That makes no sense. Many. Things make no sense when half their purpose is missing. Helen entered from the hall before I could answer. She had changed into a dark blue dress and tied her hair back. She looked rested only from a distance. Her eyes went to the polished strip. What is that? I demonstrated. Her reflection crossed the bookcase glass. She turned quickly, saw no one behind her, and went pale. You can create a person with it. A piece of one, I said. Your mind supplies the rest. She approached slowly. Was that in the coat? Yes. She did not touch it. Wolf said, someone near you could carry this object and create a reflected figure without standing behind you. How near? Several feet, depending on the glass and light. Helen thought back through the sightings. In the hotel lobby, Andrew stood beside me. I wrote it down. Who was with you at the shop window? My secretary, Clara Reed. At the office doors? Clara again. In the taxi? I was alone. Driver? I asked. Yes. Known to you? A gallery driver named Robert Lane. And outside your apartment. My doorman was nearby. So was a construction worker. Wolf said, the watcher need not be one person. Helen stared. You said that yesterday. It is now more likely. The grey figure may be borrowed from anyone wearing the proper coat. This strip creates only a fragment, a shoulder, a pale cheek, a hat brim. Once you expected the man, fragments were enough. She looked toward the front hall. And the person who came here? Fritz saw him directly, I said. Medium height, brown hair, thin face. That does not match the watcher, no. Wolf asked, who knew yesterday afternoon that you intended to seek my help? Inspector Kramer. My secretary. Andrew. Anyone else? I told Robert Lane to be available in case I needed a car. Did you name this address? No. Did you speak to Mr. Kramer from your office? Yes. Was the door open? Partly, so several people might have heard. Helen sat. I still do not understand why anyone would plant the means of the trick in your house. Wolf regarded the metal strip. Neither do I. That was more honest than comforting. The doorbell rang at 6:29. Andrew Latham was a minute early. Fritz admitted him. Latham entered the office in a dark blue suit with rain spots on one shoulder. He was 45, smooth-faced, well-built, and cultivated to the point of suspicion. His brown hair was brushed straight back. He carried no hat and wore a faint expression of injured patience. His gaze found Helen first, then the overcoat, then the metal strip. The order mattered. Helen, he said, you might have told me you were here. You knew. I knew you had consulted Wolf. I did not. No, you were staying in his house. Wolf said, sit. Latham examined the chairs as if choosing one might constitute testimony. He selected the yellow chair. I came because Helen said you wished to discuss the Vane portrait. I wished to discuss reflections. Latham smiled, politely. I know little about optics, but something about galleries. Certainly. I lifted the metal strip. Do you recognize this? His eyes rested on it for less than a second. No, Helen said. It was hidden inside the coat worn by the man following me. Latham looked at her with concern arranged carefully across his face. I thought there was no evidence such a man existed. There is evidence of a performance, Wolf said. Latham turned. Wolf continued. Miss Ward's sightings occurred through mirrors, windows, glass doors, and reflected light. This device can project part of a nearby person's reflection across another surface. Interesting, is it? For someone familiar with stagecraft or gallery lighting. Latham's smile faded slightly. Our gallery uses polished reflectors, but not toys like that. Who controls the lighting equipment? The display staff. Names? Our chief technician is Marcus Dane. 2 assistants work under him. Was Mr. Dane at the construction site opposite Miss Ward's apartment? I have no idea, Helen said. Andrew, you were at my apartment Monday. Latham turned to her. I left authentication papers. You did not tell me. You were at a client meeting. Why did you use your old key? I did not. The doorman admitted me. Did you enter my bedroom? No. Did you touch the closet mirror? Certainly not. His indignation was neat and complete. I said, a nervous man came here yesterday carrying a leather case and asking whether Helen had arrived. Latham looked at me. What has that to do with me? We are collecting nervous men. I am not nervous. No. You are polished, Wolf said. Did you tell anyone Miss Ward might come here? No. Did you know? I heard her speaking with Inspector Kramer. His name came up. Wolf's may have. Who else heard? Her secretary. Possibly Lane. Mr. Dane? He was in the display room. Close to Miss Ward's office? Across the corridor. Wolf's fingers moved once. Describe Mr. Dane. 40 or so. Medium height, brown hair, thin face. Fritz and I looked at each other. Latham noticed. What? I said. Does he own a narrow leather tool case? Probably. He carries equipment, Helen whispered. Marcus? Latham's expression changed from concern to disbelief. You cannot seriously suspect him. Wolf said, I suspect no one seriously until facts earn the effort. Marcus has worked for us 7 years. Then he knows Miss Ward's movements, the gallery's reflective surfaces, and its mounting adhesives. Latham stood. This is absurd. Helen is under strain because of the portrait dispute. You are encouraging her. Wolf's eyes hardened. Sit down. Latham remained standing. I came as a courtesy. You came because you fear what I may find. That landed. Latham sat. Wolf said, the watcher may never have stood behind Miss Ward. Someone beside her could create the image whenever required. The relevant question is therefore not who followed her, but who accompanied her. Helen looked at Latham. He met her gaze. For the first time, his confidence appeared borrowed. Wolf leaned back. Mr. Latham, you will provide Mr. Goodwin with the names and schedules of every person who accompanied Miss Ward during the 6 sightings. I will do no such thing. Then the police may request them after I report that someone entered Miss Ward's apartment, altered her mirror, planted false evidence on her fire escape, and placed an unidentified overcoat in my house. Latham's mouth tightened. You see, have no proof any gallery employee did that. Not yet. He looked at Helen. She said, give him the schedules. Latham was silent for a moment. Then he took a folded appointment book from his pocket and handed it to me. I began copying names. Wolf closed his eyes. The watcher had lost his shape. He was no longer a tall man in grey moving through New York. He was a reflection carried by someone close enough to Helen to know where she would stand and when she would turn. The stranger who planted the coat had not come to frighten her. He had come to place the machinery of fear inside Wolf's house. That meant the performance had an audience larger than Helen Ward, and whoever directed it had not yet reached the final scene. Chapter 4. The Friend Who Never Left Her Clara. Reed entered the brownstone at 11 minutes past 10 the next morning carrying white roses and the expression of a woman prepared to forgive us for being suspicious. Fritz took the flowers. Clara kept the expression. She was 34, fair-haired, slender, and dressed in dark green with a small pearl pin at her throat. Her face was pleasant without being weak, and her grey eyes moved quickly enough to prove that pleasantness was not her only equipment. Helen had telephoned her after breakfast and asked her to come. That was Helen's decision, not Wolf's. Wolf had merely said that any person present during nearly every appearance of the Grey Watcher should either visit the office or acquire a convincing illness. Clara entered with Helen beside her. Mr. Wolf, she said, I hope I can clear up this foolish misunderstanding. Wolf sat behind his desk with the morning mail untouched at his elbow. He had returned from the plant rooms 3 minutes earlier and was still wearing the look he reserved for people who interfered with orchids. Which misunderstanding? That Helen is being deceived by someone close to her. That is not a misunderstanding. It is a possibility. Clara's smile held. I have stayed close because she needed me. Helen sat in the red leather chair. Clara chose the yellow. One beside it. I remained at my desk with my notebook open. Wolf said, "Miss Ward, you told us yesterday that Andrew Latham and your secretary accompanied you during several sightings. You did not mention your cousin." Helen looked embarrassed. Clara was present more often than either of them. "How often?" Clara answered. "I was with Helen during 4 of the 6 incidents." I said, "That qualifies as often." Helen turned to me. She was helping me. "That also qualifies as close." Clara's voice cooled slightly. "Is affection now evidence?" "No. Opportunity is." Wolf looked at Helen. "List the sightings attended by Miss Reed." "The hotel, lobby, the restaurant, the shop window, outside my office. And the first sighting at your apartment?" Clara had just left. "How long before?" "Perhaps 5 minutes." "The taxi mirror?" "She arranged the car, but she was not inside." Clara crossed one leg over. "The other?" "I did not arrange the car. I asked the gallery driver to collect her." "Robert Lane?" I asked. "Yes." Wolf said, "You urged Miss Ward to seek protection?" "Certainly." "From whom?" "The man following her." "A man you never saw?" Clara's eyes narrowed. "I saw a grey figure in the hotel mirror." "Directly?" "No." "Did you see him enter or leave?" "No." "Did any hotel employee?" "Apparently not." "Then you saw the same reflection Miss Ward saw?" "Yes." "Did you call anyone's attention to it before she did?" Clara hesitated. "I may have." Helen looked at her. "You pointed him out." The office became quieter. Clara turned. "You were frightened. I saw someone behind us and warned you." "Your exact words?" Wolf asked. Clara frowned. "I do not remember." Helen did. "You said, 'There he is again.'" I put that down. Wolf said, "Again?" Clara's lips parted, then closed. "The hotel incident occurred Saturday," he continued. "Miss Ward had seen the figure only once before, outside her apartment." "Had she told you about that first sighting?" "Yes." "Then your wording was natural." "Of course. Or useful." Clara's pleasant expression weakened at the edges. "I do not know what you are suggesting." "You will." Fritz entered with coffee for the women and beer for Wolf. Clara thanked him. Helen did not notice the cup placed beside her. Wolf poured beer and waited until the foam reached the level he preferred. "Why has Miss Ward required unusual attention since her father's death?" Clara's face changed. "That has nothing to do with a man following her. Her inheritance has everything to do with any attempt to influence her behavior." Helen said, "My father died 4 months ago." "I know," Wolf replied. "Suddenly. A heart attack. At home? At the gallery? Witnesses?" Andrew found him in his office. Clara said, "The doctors had warned Uncle James about his heart." Wolf looked at her. "You call him uncle, though he was not your father's brother." "My mother was his sister." "Then Miss Ward is your first cousin?" "Yes." "What did James Ward leave?" Helen answered, reluctantly. "His controlling interest in the gallery, the family house in Connecticut, investments, and the Ward Trust." "I do," Helen replied. "My father named me controlling trustee." "Other beneficiaries?" "Clara, 2 family charities, several retired employees. Can you sell assets? Can you change investment managers?" "Yes." Clara lifted her coffee. "This is irrelevant," Wolf ignored her. "What occurs if Miss Ward becomes unable to act?" Helen looked toward Clara. "My cousin becomes temporary trustee." I stopped moving my pencil for half a second, then continued. Wolf's eyes went to Clara. "Under what conditions?" "Death, prolonged illness, legal incapacity," Clara said. "Fear?" "Certainly not," Helen said. "There is also a protective clause." Clara's head turned sharply. Wolf noticed. "What clause?" Helen spoke slowly. "If I am considered temporarily unable to manage the trust because of severe emotional distress, the advisors may appoint an acting trustee for 90 days. "Who?" "The P. next named trustee." "Miss Reed." "Yes." Clara put down her cup. "That clause was written to protect Helen, not me." "Who decides whether it applies?" Wolf asked. The trust attorney and 2 advisors. On what evidence? A physician's report, statements from family or business associates, proof that Helen's judgment is impaired. I said, repeated reports of an invisible follower might help. Clara's face hardened. You are being offensive. I'm being chronological. Helen stared at her hands. Wolf said, how soon could you assume control? I would not. That was not the question. Clara looked at him. If the advisors acted immediately. And during the 90 days, I could approve investments, suspend distributions, change security arrangements, and authorize emergency sales. Could you direct the gallery, shares held by the trust? Yes, but only temporarily. Could you approve the disputed Vane portrait purchase? Helen looked up. Clara did not answer. Wolf repeated it. Could you? Yes, there it was. Not guilt. Not yet. But a useful door had opened. I said, so if Helen is judged too unstable to manage the trust, Clara can approve Latham's $2 million painting deal. Clara turned to Helen. I would never do that against your wishes. Helen's voice was quiet. Andrew asked you about the clause last month. Clara went still. When? At dinner. He asked whether someone could step in if I became ill. He was discussing your workload. No. He mentioned the portrait. Clara's expression tightened. Helen, you are confusing separate conversations. That phrase gets expensive in court, I said. Wolf raised one finger. Miss Reed, who knew of the protective clause? The family, the trust attorney. Andrew, perhaps. Marcus Dane? No. Robert Lane? Certainly not. Miss Ward's secretary? I doubt it. Did you tell anyone? No. Helen looked at her. You discussed it with Andrew. That is not the same as telling outsiders. No, Wolf said. It is telling the man who stands to gain from your temporary control. Clara rose. I will not sit here and be accused. You have not been accused. You have implied that I frightened my cousin for money. I have stated that the arrangement benefits you and Mr. Latham. Clara's eyes flashed. I have spent 4 months helping Helen because she has been overwhelmed since her father died. I stayed at her apartment, I attended meetings, I traveled with her. I urged her to hire security because she insisted she was being followed. Did she insist before you suggested it? Clara looked at Wolf. He continued. At the hotel, you said. There he is again. At the restaurant, who first noticed the figure? Helen answered before Clara could. She did. The shop window. Clara told me not to turn around. The office doors? She took my arm and pointed toward the glass. Clara turned pale. Helen stared at her now, not Wolf. You saw him first every time. I was watching because you were afraid. Or I was afraid because you were watching. That sentence hurt Clara. Whether because it was false or because it was true, remained to be discovered. Clara sat again. Her voice softened. Helen, your father died without warning. You barely slept for weeks. Then the portrait dispute began. Andrew challenged your judgment in front of the board. You were under pressure. I was trying to help. Wolf said, by making the danger visible? I did not make anything. Did you ever handle the abandoned overcoat? No. The polished reflector? No. The clear mounting adhesive? No. The wedge placed in Miss Ward's closet mirror? No. Did you enter her apartment Monday? No. Did you possess a key? Yes. Helen looked at her. You told me you returned it. I thought I had. A common epidemic, I said. Clara ignored me. Wolf asked, where is it now? In my handbag. Helen's face hardened. You carry it? For emergencies. Without telling me? Clara opened her handbag and removed a small brass key. She placed it on Wolf's desk. I never used it without permission. Except to retain it, Wolf said. Clara's hand withdrew. I took the key and marked it for comparison with Helen's lock. Wolf said, Where were you Monday evening between 5 and 7? At home. Witness? My housekeeper left at 4. Telephone calls? One to Andrew. Helen looked at her again. What did you discuss? The gallery. The portrait? Yes. The trust? Clara hesitated. Possibly. Wrote that down too. Wolf leaned back. Miss Reed, your cousin's fear has been remarkably public. The doorman knows, the hotel staff knows, the gallery staff knows, Inspector Kramer knows, Mr. Latham knows, I know. Each sighting occurred where another person could later confirm her reaction, even if no one confirmed the man. Clara said nothing. The follower was not designed to attack her, Wolf continued. He never approached, threatened, or touched her, except for a staged collision that left construction grit. His purpose was repetition, Helen whispered, to make me look unstable. To make your fear documented, Wolf said. 1 incident might be dismissed. 6 incidents, repeated to friends, employees, hotel staff, police, and a detective. Become a history. Clara said, you are twisting concern into conspiracy. No, I am identifying utility. Wolf's voice remained calm. The person arranging the reflections needed Miss Ward to notice them. The person accompanying her needed to validate the reaction. A frightened woman alone may doubt herself. A frightened woman beside a trusted cousin hears, there he is again, and accepts the fear as shared. Helen closed her eyes briefly. Clara reached toward her. Helen moved her hand away. That gesture affected Clara more than Wolf's questions had. She stood. I should leave. Wolf said. You may. Clara looked at him. That surprises me. It should not. If you participated, you will report what we know. If you did not, you will consider who used your concern. I do not need your permission to think. No. Only discipline. She took her coat from Fritz in the hall and left without looking back. Helen remained in the office. For a while no one spoke. Then she said, I trusted her more than anyone. Wolf's eyes were half closed. That is why. Her presence matters. Trust is not proof of guilt, it is proof of opportunity. You think she did it. I think she benefited, recognized the watcher before you did, carried a key to your apartment, discussed the trust with Mr. Latham, and stood beside you during nearly every reflected sighting. That sounds like guilt. It sounds like evidence requiring more evidence. Helen rose and walked to the window. What should I do? Nothing unusual. She will warn Andrew. Good. Helen turned. You want that? Yes. Why? Because a conspiracy under observation either stops or accelerates. Both are informative, I said. And if Clara is innocent? Then her warning may expose the person who used her. Helen looked unconvinced, but she nodded. Fritz took her upstairs. When she had gone, I placed Clara's key beside the polished reflector. The case is getting crowded. No, Wolf said. It is becoming narrow. Clara was present 4 times, carried Helen's key, and gains the trust. Yes. Latham gains the portrait sale. Yes. Marcus Dane has the equipment. Yes. Robert Lane supplied the taxi. Yes. You call that narrow? The instrument, motive, and witness need not belong to the same person. I leaned back. A team. Possibly. Clara makes Helen notice the reflection. Dane produces it. Latham benefits. Possibly. And the nervous visitor who planted the coat. Probably Mr. Dane if Mr. Latham's description is accurate. Then why hide the reflector inside the coat? Wolf's lips tightened. That remains the flaw. A big one. Yes. If they wanted the watcher believed real, leaving. The trick for us to find was foolish. Unless the coat was not planted by the conspirators. I stared at him. Someone else? Someone who wished to expose the performance without openly accusing its directors. Who? Wolf reached. For the telephone, invite Robert Lane, the driver, at once. I made the call. Lane was out with a gallery car and would come at 4. Wolf closed his eyes. The unseen follower was constructed for witnesses, he said. Miss Ward's fear had to become public, repeated and believable before the trust advisors could act. So Clara is either helping create the record or being used to certify it. Yes. And the coat? Someone knew Miss Ward would come here and left us the device. To save her? Perhaps. Why not simply tell us the truth, fear, guilt, or self-interest? Outside, a car horn sounded and a delivery truck rattled past the brownstone. Upstairs, Helen Ward was deciding whether the cousin who had held her arm through every frightening reflection had been protecting her or guiding her eyes. For 6 days, Clara Reed had never left Helen alone. That had looked like devotion. Now it looked like part of the performance. Chapter 5. The window across the street at 7:20 that evening. I stood on the 4th level of the construction site opposite Helen Ward's apartment, with rainwater dripping from a steel beam onto my collar and a foreman named Eddie Ross explaining that private detectives were not covered by his insurance. I'm not planning to fall, I told him. Nobody schedules it. Then keep the paperwork ready. He had given me a hard hat, a flashlight, and 20 minutes on the unfinished floor directly across from Helen's living room windows. The light had gone early. Madison Avenue shone below in wet strips. Workers were leaving through the side. Gate and the city had begun switching on its millions of rectangular eyes. Helen was in her apartment. Clara Reed was with her. That arrangement had been Wolf's idea, which meant Helen disliked it. Clara did not know it was an arrangement, and I was expected to discover something while getting damp. Earlier that afternoon, Clara had telephoned Helen and apologized. She said Wolf's questions had upset her, that she wanted to explain herself privately, and that she could not bear the thought of Helen spending another night among strangers. Helen, following instructions, invited her to the apartment for dinner. Saul Panzer watched the front entrance. Robert Lane watched the service door. Without knowing, Saul watched him. I watched the window. Wolf watched nothing, since observation, performed outside the brownstone, was properly delegated. Through binoculars, I could see most of Helen's living room. She had left the curtains open as instructed. The lamps were arranged exactly as they had been during the first sighting, with one near the sofa and another on a side table beside the window. Helen sat facing the street. Clara moved around the room behind her. At 7:26, Clara placed her handbag on the sofa. At 7:28, Helen rose and approached the window. Nothing appeared. Clara opened the handbag, removed something, and held it low beside her hip. A narrow flash crossed the room. Then a tall grey figure appeared in the window behind Helen. I knew no one stood there. I had the whole apartment in view. Clara was 6 feet to Helen's left. The hallway was empty. The grey overcoat hung on a wooden stand near the bedroom door, 10 feet behind them. Yet in the dark window glass, a man seemed to stand directly behind Helen's shoulder. The shape was incomplete. A grey chest, a pale streak where a face should be. A dark line suggesting a hat brim. But when the mind expects a man, it does not request fingerprints. Helen stiffened. Clara moved closer. The grey figure moved with her. I adjusted the binoculars. In Clara's right hand was a small rectangular object angled toward the window. It caught the reflection of the overcoat and threw it across the dark glass. Her handbag concealed most of the movement. To Helen, who was staring outward, Clara seemed merely to stand beside her. Clara touched Helen's arm. Even across the street I could read her lips. There he is. The same words she had used in the hotel. Helen turned sharply. Clara closed the handbag. The figure vanished. There was no man behind them. Helen moved toward the bedroom door and saw only the coat on its stand. Clara spoke rapidly, pointing toward the window as if the watcher had moved outside. The trick had lasted 4 seconds. That was enough. I stepped away from the beam and telephoned Wolf from the temporary site office. Fritz answered. Archie, put him on. Wolf came after 20 seconds. I saw it, I said. The figure. Clear enough to frighten a client. Clara used a narrow mirror from her handbag. It reflected the coat behind Helen into the window. Did Miss Ward react naturally? She nearly jumped through the glass. Did Miss Reed speak? She said, "There he is." Again, yes. Return after obtaining the instrument. Clara may object, then be persuasive. He hung up. I crossed the street. The doorman, George Bell, admitted me without argument. He had been told I might return, though not why. The elevator. Took long enough for Clara to hide a mirror, invent a story, or develop innocence. I rang the apartment bell. Helen opened the door. Her face was pale, but her eyes were steady. She had played her part. Clara stood near the sofa with the handbag. "Under one arm, Mr. Goodwin," she said. "What are you doing here?" "Enjoying the view." Helen stepped aside. I entered and closed the door. Clara's pleasant expression became cautious. "You were watching us?" "From the construction site." "That is outrageous." "It was wet, too." Helen said, "Archie saw the man." I looked at her. She was good. Clara tightened her grip on the handbag. "What did you see?" A grey figure appeared behind Helen in the window while no one stood there. Clara's eyes moved toward the coat hanging near the bedroom. Then he was outside. "No." "The figure came from inside. I don't understand." "That is the usual advantage of a trick." I held out my hand. "Give me the handbag." Clara laughed once. "Certainly not." "Helen?" Helen looked at her cousin. "Give it to him." "No." The word came too fast. Clara stepped backward. I moved between her and the hall. "I'm not going to wrestle you for it," I said. "That would wrinkle both of us. But Saul Panzer is downstairs, and Inspector Kramer can be here quickly. You have no right to search me." "True." Helen's voice was low. "You used the mirror." Clara looked at her. "What mirror?" "The one in your bag." For a second, Clara's face emptied. Then indignation rushed back. "You are letting Wolf turn you against me." "I saw the figure. Archie saw you make it." "That is absurd," I said. The grey coat behind Helen was reflected into the window. "You held the mirror beside your hip. When you closed the bag, the man disappeared." Clara's hand moved toward the clasp. I caught the bag before she could open it. She pulled back. The strap snapped. The handbag fell. A silver rectangle slid across the carpet. It was 6 inches long and 3 wide, thinner than ordinary glass, and backed with black leather. One edge had a jointed metal clip that could hold it at an adjustable angle. The room went silent. Helen stared at it. Clara did too. I picked it up by the edge. "Portable watcher," I said. Clara sank onto the sofa. Helen remained standing. "How long?" she asked. Clara did not answer. "How long have you been doing this?" Clara's eyes filled, but not enough to interfere with thought. "Helen, listen to me. I have been listening for 6 days. It was not meant to hurt you. You made me afraid to sleep. I was trying to protect you." "That sentence has had a difficult week," I said. Clara looked at me. "You don't know what was happening. Then improve me." She pressed both hands together. "Andrew said Helen was exhausted. He said she was making dangerous decisions about the trust and the gallery. He thought she needed to step away temporarily." Helen's voice hardened. "So he asked you to make me appear insane?" "No, never insane. Only frightened, overwhelmed." "Publicly frightened," I said. Clara looked down. "Andrew said the advisors would never act unless they saw a pattern, and you supplied one. He said it would last only a few weeks. I would become temporary trustee, approve the portrait, purchase and settle the gallery dispute, then Helen would resume control." Helen crossed the room slowly. "You planned to take my trust because I disagreed with Andrew about a painting." "It was more than that. He said the gallery might collapse if the sale failed. Investors would leave. Employees would lose their jobs." "Did you believe him?" "Yes. Do you now?" Clara did not answer. I placed the mirror on the table. "Who designed the reflections?" "Marcus Dane." That was expected, but still useful. "The gallery technician?" "Yes." He built the reflector found inside the overcoat? I think so. You think? I never saw that device. Did you know someone planted the coat at Wolf's house? No. Who arranged the construction site panel? Marcus. He said it was part of a lighting survey. The hotel mirror? He told me where to stand. The shop window? He selected the route. The office doors? He adjusted the lights. The taxi mirror? Robert Lane did that. Helen turned. Robert? Clara nodded miserably. He was paid. By Andrew? I don't know. Marcus gave him instructions. I asked. The cigarette on the fire escape. Clara hesitated. I placed it. Unsmoked. Marcus gave it to me. With theatrical adhesive. Yes. Why? To prove someone had been outside the apartment. No footprints? He said rain would erase them. There had been no rain that night. He made mistakes. So did you. Clara flinched. The grit on Helen's coat. I brushed against her with a cloth Marcus had covered in construction dust. Last night outside the building? Yes. You wore the grey overcoat. No. A man from the gallery did. Name? I don't know. That answer needs work. Marcus called him Tom. Description? Medium height. Brown hair, thin face. Fritz's visitor. The same man who planted the overcoat at Wolf's house? I did not know about that. Did Marcus know Helen was coming to Wolf? Yes. How? Andrew told him. Helen stared at her cousin. You told Andrew about my call to Kramer. Yes. And he sent someone ahead of me, I suppose. I put that in my notebook. Why hide the polished reflector inside the coat? Clara looked genuinely confused. I don't know. Andrew wanted Wolf to believe the Watcher was real. Then leaving the instrument was foolish. Perhaps Marcus left it by mistake. Men who measure reflection angles do not usually forget the mirror. Clara shook her head. I cannot explain it. That was the first thing she had said, which I completely believed. I telephoned Wolf again. This time he listened while I reported Clara's confession, the handbag mirror, Dane's, roll, Lane's roll, and Latham's direction. When I finished, Wolf said, Bring Miss Reed. Willingly, if possible. And Helen? Certainly. I hung up. Clara looked toward the front door. I need a lawyer. Eventually. You cannot detain me. No. But leaving now will make Andrew wonder why. That stopped. Her, I said. He thinks the performance succeeded tonight. Helen saw the Watcher again. You can return with us, tell Wolf everything, and let Andrew continue believing his plan is alive. Helen said, Come with us. Clara looked at her. Why? Would you help me? I am helping myself. There was more steel in Helen Ward than her cousin had accounted for. Before leaving, I inspected the fire escape again. The cigarette spot had been cleaned, but a faint patch of adhesive remained near the railing. In the hall closet, I found a cloth wrapped in paper and coated with the same grey and red construction grit that had marked Helen's coat. Clara admitted placing it there. The illusion now had weight, smell, texture, and witnesses. That was the point. On the way to the brownstone, Clara sat beside Helen in the back of the taxi. Neither spoke. I rode in front and watched the driver's mirror, though no grey figure appeared. Wolf received us at 9:15. He had delayed dinner, an act that would have earned gratitude from a less civilized household and terror from ours. Fritz brought coffee for Helen and Clara, beer for Wolf, and nothing for me until I complained. The handbag mirror lay on Wolf's desk, beside the longer reflector from the coat. He examined both. The smaller instrument was made for concealment, he said. Clara nodded. Marcus Dane gave it to me. When? 6 days ago. Who proposed the scheme? Andrew. His exact proposal. Clara rubbed her palms together. He said Helen's grief had affected her judgment. He said the board and trust advisors needed visible evidence before they could protect the estate. He asked me to report her fear and accompany her during several incidents. Did he say the follower would be imaginary? Not at first. Later, Marcus explained the reflections. Did Mr. Latham promise you money? No. Control, temporary control of the trust, which would allow you to authorize the Vane portrait purchase. Yes. Did you know the portrait was false? No. Andrew said Helen was wrong. Helen said, "He showed you none of my analysis." Clara lowered her eyes. No. Wolf leaned back. You wish to believe him? Yes. Because? Clara's face tightened. Because my uncle never trusted me with anything. Helen inherited the gallery, the house, and control of the trust. I received an allowance and advice. Helen stared at her. So this was resentment. Partly. At least she had stopped decorating it. Wolf said, Miss Reed, you participated in fraud, trespass, intimidation, and an attempt to deprive your cousin of legal control. Clara's voice shook. I know. No, you are beginning to know. Helen turned away. Wolf closed his eyes for several seconds. When he opened them, he looked at me. Archie, what remains unexplained? The reflector inside the abandoned coat. Yes. The coat was planted before Helen arrived. If Latham wanted us to believe in a physical follower, hiding the device inside it risked exposing the illusion. Precisely, Clara said. Marcus may have wanted you to find it. Wolf's eyes moved to her. Why? He was frightened of Andrew. You observed this? Yesterday afternoon, Marcus asked whether I was certain the plan would stop after the trust meeting. He said Andrew was changing the arrangement. What change? He would not say. Did he mention the coat? No. I said, maybe? Dane planted the device as insurance, or warning, Wolf said. Helen looked at him. Then Marcus is helping us. Do not rush toward gratitude. A guilty man may expose a larger crime to reduce his own danger. Clara said, Andrew planned it. Parts of it, Wolf replied. You don't believe me? I believe that you know only the portion assigned to you. Clara went pale again. What other portion? Wolf looked at the two mirrors. The follower's purpose was to make Miss Ward's fear public, repeated, and credible. You helped accomplish that. But planting the mechanism in my house served a different purpose. To expose Andrew? I asked, perhaps. Or to draw Wolf into the case. Yes, Helen said. Why would Andrew want that? He would not. That settled over the room. Wolf continued. Therefore, either Mr. Latham did not know the reflector was concealed in the coat, or someone altered his design. Marcus, Clara whispered. Possibly, I said. So Clara is part of the deception, but not its architect. Clearly. Clara looked relieved too soon. Wolf saw it. Participation is not innocence, he said. The relief disappeared. He turned to Helen. You will return to the gallery tomorrow and announce that you have changed your opinion of the portrait. Helen stiffened. You want me to certify it? No. You will say only that new evidence requires reconsideration. Why? To force Mr. Latham and Mr. Dane to act before they know Miss Reed has confessed, Clara asked. What will happen to me? You will remain here tonight. Am I a prisoner? No. You are safer under observation. From Andrew. From whoever placed the truth inside the coat. Outside, the rain began again, tapping lightly against the office windows. The grey watcher had appeared one last time across the street, built from a hanging coat, a hidden mirror, and Clara's hand. The cigarette had never been smoked, the footprints had never existed, the construction grit had been brushed onto Helen like stage powder. But the fear had been real. Someone had designed it that way. Clara had helped perform the deception. Wolf was now certain she had not written the whole play. Chapter 6. The Watcher. Behind the fear, Clara Reed broke at 10 minutes past midnight. Though nothing in the room made a sound, the rain had stopped. Helen was upstairs in the south guest room. Fritz had cleared away the coffee tray and gone to inspect the kitchen before bed. Wolf sat behind his desk with his eyes closed, his hands resting over the center of his yellow shirt, and the two polished reflectors lying before him like surgical instruments. Clara sat in the red leather chair. She had spent nearly an hour repeating that Andrew Latham had planned everything. Wolf had spent nearly an hour not believing her. I sat at my desk with a notebook open. The black overcoat hung near. The bookshelves. Under the office lamps it had lost its menace but not its importance. Wolf opened his eyes. "Mr. Latham did not instruct you." Clara's face tightened. "I told you he did." "Yes." "He wanted control of the gallery purchase." "Yes." "He discussed the trust clause." "Yes." "Then why do you refuse to believe me?" "Because you have described a conspiracy requiring knowledge Mr. Latham did not possess." She looked at him. Wolf continued. "The person who designed this scheme knew the precise language of the protective trust clause. He knew what evidence the advisors would require, how long temporary control could last, and what authority the acting trustee would receive. Mr. Latham may have known the general arrangement. He did not draft it." Clara's hands closed together. Wolf said, "The person also knew that repeated reports of fear, supported by family testimony, could justify a medical examination without proving permanent incapacity." "That could have been Andrew's lawyer." "No. The Ward Trust has its own counsel." Clara said nothing. I looked at my notes. "Martin Hale," I said. Her eyes moved to me too quickly. That was enough for Wolf. "Indeed," he said. Martin Hale had been James Ward's lawyer for 22 years. He had drafted the trust, handled the estate after Ward's death, and advised Helen on the temporary trustee clause. I had telephoned his office that afternoon and been told he was away on business. He was not away. Saul had found him dining alone at a private club on East 52nd Street. Wolf said, "Mr. Hale instructed you." Clara looked toward the office door. "No." "He told you that Miss Ward endangered the trust." "No." "He persuaded you that temporary control was necessary." "No." "He used your resentment, your anxiety over the family fortune, and your wish to prove yourself more capable than your cousin." Clara stood. "I will not listen to this." "Sit." Wolf's voice was not loud, but she sat. He leaned back. "You have lied to protect Mr. Hale because he convinced you that Mr. Latham would bear the blame if the performance was exposed." Clara stared at him. "The gallery scheme supplied an attractive surface," Wolf continued. "A disputed painting, an ambitious partner, a frightened heiress. But the trust, not the portrait, is the prize." "The portrait is worth $2 million, Clara said. "The trust is worth nearly 12. That ended the arithmetic. Clara lowered her head. For a while the only sound was the ticking of the office clock. Wolf glanced at it once, as if even time should avoid becoming theatrical in his house. Then Clara spoke. "Martin said Helen was going to destroy everything." I put the pencil down and picked it up again. Wolf said, "Begin at the beginning." Clara's voice was flat. 3 weeks after Uncle James died, Martin asked me to lunch. He said Helen was changing investment managers, questioning old property sales, and demanding records from the trust. Was she? Yes. Why? She thought some assets had been handled badly. Had they? I did not know. Mr. Hale did. Clara looked at Wolf. He said Helen was grieving and suspicious. He said if she removed the current managers too quickly, the trust would lose millions. Which managers? Hale Financial Custody and Bramwell Investments. I wrote the names. Hale Financial Custody belongs to Martin, I asked. His brother owns it. That was not proof, but it was motive, wearing a clean collar. Wolf said, "What did he ask you to do?" At first, only to watch Helen. He said I should stay close and report anything irrational. Did you? Yes. What irrational conduct did you observe? Clara hesitated. Nothing serious. Nothing at all. She was tired, angry. She distrusted everyone. Distrust is not irrational when everyone is lying. Clara flinched. Wolf continued, "When did the grey follower appear?" Martin proposed it after Helen told him she intended to remove Hale Financial Custody. What were his words? Clara rubbed her palms against her skirt. He said she needed rest. He said the trustees could intervene only if her distress became visible to others. He called it a temporary protection. Protection for whom? He said for Helen and the trust. What did you think? I thought he was right. No. What did you want? Her face tightened. To stop her from changing everything. And to become acting trustee, yes. That one word carried more truth than the last hour. I asked, where did Andrew Latham fit? Martin said Andrew was already worried about Helen's judgment because of the portrait. He told me to encourage Andrew's concern. Did Latham know the watcher was false? No. That changed part of the case. You told us Andrew. Planned it, I said. I lied. Why choose him? Martin said if anything went wrong, suspicion would fall on Andrew. He had motive. He wanted the painting approved. Did Andrew help at all? He discussed the trust clause with me. He said Helen needed time away. But he never ordered the reflections. Marcus Dane? Clara nodded. Martin hired him privately. Dane knew Hale was behind it. I think so. Robert Lane. Marcus paid him. The nervous visitor connected with the coat. Martin told me Marcus would arrange something at Wolf's house, but I never saw the visitor and do not know who actually came. Marcus. Did Hale order him to conceal the reflector inside it? Clara looked uncertain. Martin said Wolf might become involved. He wanted evidence strong enough to make the follower seem real. That does not answer the reflector. No. Wolf said, because you do not know. No. Did Mr. Hale know the mechanism was inside the lining? I cannot say. Wolf closed his eyes briefly. The unexplained coat still bothered him. It bothered me too. A planted overcoat could support the illusion. A reflector hidden inside it could destroy the illusion. Someone had either made a foolish mistake or inserted a warning. Clara continued. Martin gave me the small mirror strip. He told me where to stand and how to angle it. Marcus arranged the construction panel and the gallery lights. At the hotel, I held the reflector beside my handbag. At the restaurant, I used the mirror behind the bar. At the shop, Marcus had already positioned the coat on a display form inside a doorway. And Helen? At first, she needed prompting. Wolf's eyes opened. Explain. The first time, outside her apartment, I said I thought someone was watching from the construction site. She looked and saw the grey shape reflected in the metal panel. So you created the expectation? Yes. At the hotel, I said. There he is again. At the restaurant, I told her not to turn around because the man was in the mirror. At the office, I pointed toward the glass doors. And later, Clara's voice fell. She began seeing him before I spoke. Helen had reached the point where fear no longer required instruction. That had been the design. Clara looked toward the ceiling, perhaps thinking of her cousin upstairs. She saw grey coats in windows, reflections in taxis, men standing across streets. Sometimes there was no setup. She would grip my arm and say he was there. Wolf said, "You trained her." Clara's eyes filled. I did not understand what it would do. You understood enough to repeat it. I thought it would stop after the trust advisors acted. Fear does not obey legal calendars, she lowered her head. I asked, "The cigarette?" I placed it on the fire escape with adhesive. "The grit?" I used a cloth Marcus prepared. "The note under the door," Martin typed it. "You saw him? He gave it to me in an envelope." "You put it under Helen's door?" "Yes. The mirror wedge in the closet. I placed it Monday while Helen was at the gallery, with the key you claimed you had returned." "Yes." Each answer removed another piece of kindness from the word cousin. Wolf's voice hardened. Mr. Hale required Miss Ward to appear unstable, not merely frightened. The repeated watcher supplied a pattern. Your testimony supplied family confirmation. Mr. Latham's concern supplied business confirmation. The hotel, doorman, gallery employees, and Inspector Kramer supplied a public record. Clara said, Martin said no one would be hurt. Wolf made a disgusted sound. He arranged to invade a woman's home, corrupt her perceptions, isolate her judgment, and seize her legal authority. His definition of injury is convenient. Clara looked at him with sudden anger. You make. It sounds simple. It was not. Helen inherited everything. Uncle James trusted her with the gallery, the house, the investments. I was treated like a guest in my own family. And that justified madness by suggestion? No. But it made Mr. Hale's proposal attractive. She looked away. Wolf leaned forward slightly. What assets did Miss Ward intend to move? I do not know all of them. Name those you know. Hale Financial Custody held nearly $4 million in bonds and reserve cash. Helen wanted an independent audit. When? Next week. Who would conduct it? A firm named Lawson and Pierce. Did Mr. Hale know? Yes. And temporary control would allow you to cancel it. Yes. There was the real prize. Not the portrait. Not even temporary authority. Time. 90 days to move money, alter records, or erase evidence before Helen recovered control. I said, Hale was not protecting the trust. He was protecting himself from the audit. Clara nodded slowly. Martin said the audit would create panic and expose private family matters. His own matters, Wolf said. Helen's voice came from the doorway. What private matters? We all turned. She stood there in a robe over her dress, pale and rigid. Fritz was behind her, unhappy that she had left the guest room, but unwilling. To restrain a client physically. Clara rose. Helen. Do not. Clara stopped. Helen entered the office. How long were you listening? Long enough, Wolf said. Sit, Miss Ward. She remained standing. Martin Hale planned it? Yes, Wolf said, and Clara helped him. Yes, Clara whispered. I am sorry. Helen looked at her. No, you are caught. That was harsher and more accurate. Helen turned to Wolf. What does Hale want? Control long enough to stop your audit and secure assets held through his family's firm. Steal them? Possibly conceal prior theft, improper loans or unauthorized transfers. We need records. I demanded them after Father died. Martin delayed. Why did you suspect trouble? My father had written notes about missing interest payments. He said the trust statements did not match the bank reports. Clara looked up. You never told me. I told Martin. Wolf's fingers moved once. When? The day before Father died. The room changed. I said, your father knew about the discrepancies before his heart attack. Yes. Did Hale know he knew? Yes. Wolf regarded her. Who was with your father when he died? Andrew found him. Who saw him earlier? Martin had a meeting with him that afternoon. Clara went pale again. Wolf said nothing for several seconds. Then he looked at me. Archie, telephone Saul. He is to learn everything concerning James Ward's final day, especially his meeting with Mr. Hale. Also obtain the trust correspondence, bank statements, and the proposed audit notice. Helen said, do you think Father was murdered? I think your question has become unavoidable. Clara covered her mouth. Wolf turned to her. Did Mr. Hale ever mention James Ward's death while persuading you? He said Uncle James's heart failed because Helen had burdened him with disputes. Helen's face hardened. He blamed me. Yes. So he used Father's death too, Wolf said. Fear is most effective when it borrows guilt. I telephoned Saul. When I finished, Wolf instructed Fritz to prepare a room for Clara. She objected that she wished to leave. Wolf said, you may leave. Mr. Hale may then learn within an hour that you have confessed. She stayed. Helen went upstairs without speaking to her cousin. Clara remained in the office, staring at the polished mirror on Wolf's desk. I said, Hale hid behind her resentment. Wolf shook his head, behind her fear. Fear of losing the family fortune, and fear of remaining unimportant. He made temporary power appear like justice. He used Helen's fear to seize control, and Clara's fear to perform the trick, yes. And Andrew was only a useful suspect. Perhaps also a useful fool. I picked up the small reflector. Clara says Helen began seeing the Watcher even without a setup. That was inevitable. Once the mind learns a threat, it supplies missing details. So Hale no longer needed the Grey Man. No. Miss Ward carried him. The office clock showed 1:20. Outside, West 35th Street was quiet except for a distant taxi and water moving through the gutter. The watcher had never been a man in grey. He had been a sentence repeated by someone trusted. There he is again. Clara had given the fear a shape. Marcus Dane had given it reflections. Martin Hale had given it a legal purpose. And now Wolf had found the man who had been hiding behind it all. Not in the glass. In the trust papers. Chapter 7. The Account. No one saw money is easier to hide than a man because nobody expects it to have a face. At 9 the next morning, I was in the offices of Lawson and Pierce on Lower Broadway with 3 trust ledgers, 2 bank statements, and an accountant named Milton Gray who considered arithmetic a moral duty. Gray was 50, narrow, bald and offended by untidy columns. Helen Ward had authorized him to examine the records Wolf obtained from Martin Hale's office through a request delivered by the trust advisors. Hale had objected, delayed, threatened legal action, and finally produced copies that looked clean, enough to be washed. Gray distrusted clean books. So does money disappear, I asked. It does not disappear, he said. It is transferred, concealed, renamed, or stolen. That is more comforting. He ignored me and placed 3 sheets side by side. The Ward Trust statements showed regular payments to firms called Northbridge Asset Review, Crown Harbour Consulting, and Meridian Property Control. Over 2 years, the 3 companies had received $840,000. What did they do? I asked. Nothing. Nothing is expensive. They submitted invoices for investment analysis, property supervision, and legal. Compliance. Were the services performed? No reports exist. No employees are listed. The addresses belong to mailbox offices. Owners. Paper companies held by other paper companies. He tapped a page, but the accounts receiving the money were opened with letters of authority signed by Martin Hale. Could that be proper? Not without approval from the controlling trustee. James Ward? Yes. Did he approve? Them? Gray took off his glasses. The approvals carry his signature. That sounds like yes. They are forged. He handed me 2 documents. One was an authentic letter signed by James Ward. The other authorized a payment to Northbridge Asset Review. The signatures looked identical until Gray pointed to the final stroke of the W. In the genuine signature, the pen pressure faded. In the false one, the line darkened. Copied from a model, he said. Possibly traced. How many? At least 14. Who prepared the documents? Hale's office. I looked at the total again. 840,000. That is what we can see. What can't we see? Gray. Turn to another sheet. Several bond redemptions were deposited into temporary holding accounts, then transferred to companies not named in the trust records. I estimate another 1.3 million. That makes Hale ambitious. It makes him a criminal. Accountants are refreshing when annoyed. Gray placed a narrow ledger on top of the stack. This book was not included in Hale's official production. Where did it come from? Miss Ward found it among her father's personal papers. The ledger contained handwritten notations beside account numbers. James Ward had circled 5 transfers and written the same initials. Beside each MH, at the bottom of the page he had written, "Demand full files Friday. Remove Hale. Call Lawson." What date? I asked. 3 days before his death. That was useful and ugly. Did he call Lawson? No. Did he meet Hale? According to Miss Ward, on the afternoon he died. Gray nodded toward a folder. There is also a draft letter removing Martin Hale as legal advisor to the trust. Signed? Yes. Delivered? No. The letter had been found in James Ward's locked desk. It was dated the day of his death and accused Hale of unauthorized transfers, false invoices, and concealment of investment records. James Ward had known. Martin Hale had known that he knew. I telephoned Wolf from Gray's office. Hale stole at least 2 million, I said. James Ward found the transfers and signed a letter removing him 3 days later. He died before sending it. Cause of death? Heart failure, officially. Medication? I'm checking. Who supplied his lunch that day? That is oddly specific. Answer when you know. He hung up. Gray looked at me. Does Wolf always end conversations before other people? He believes telephones encourage waste. I spent the next 2 hours tracing the paper companies. Northbridge Asset Review had been formed by a lawyer who shared office space with Hale's brother. Crown Harbour Consulting had a bank account, controlled by Hale's private secretary. Meridian Property Control existed only as a registration number, a mailbox, and a rubber stamp. The money moved through all three, then entered Hale Financial Custody as emergency reserve deposits. It was theft with enough paperwork to resemble respectability from across the room. At noon, Saul telephoned. "I found Thomas Grant," he said. "Alive?" "Not yet." "That answer needs improvement." I found his name. Thomas Grant had worked as Martin Hale's junior clerk for 5 years. He had left Hale's office 4 days earlier without notice. His apartment was empty, his bank account untouched, and his sister in Brooklyn had not heard from him. Description: 41, medium height, brown hair, thin face, Fritz's nervous visitor. "The coat," I said. "Probably." "Where did he get it?" "His sister says he owned a long black overcoat bought second-hand, too large for him. That matched. Why come to Wolf?" She found a note in his desk. It says, "If anything happens, Nero Wolf has the coat." I sat straighter. What else? A storage receipt from a luggage room at Grand Central, locker 214. "Meet me there." Gray objected when I left before lunch. He said financial. Crimes should not be interrupted by sandwiches. I told him Wolf would approve the principle and reject the diet. Saul met me beneath the main clock at Grand Central. We opened locker 214 with the key found in Grant's desk. Inside was a flat leather case, a bundle of copied trust records, and a small tape recorder. The leather case was 12 inches long and 2 inches wide. Fritz had seen it in Grant's hand. The case was empty except for grey dust and a strip of black thread. Grant had carried the polished reflector to the brownstone inside that case, hidden it in the coat lining, and left both behind. Not a mistake, a warning. The copied records showed the same false companies Gray had identified, but Grant had added notes in the margins. He had traced payments from the Ward Trust to Hale's family accounts. He had also copied a memorandum written by James Ward. It stated that Hale would be removed on Friday morning. James Ward died Thursday afternoon. Saul switched on the tape. Recorder. Grant's voice came through faintly. "My name is Thomas Grant. I worked for Martin Hale. If this is being heard, he knows I copied the Ward accounts." There was a pause and a rustle. "Hale is trying to have Helen Ward declared temporarily unfit. He says it is to protect the trust. It is to stop the audit. Clara Reed is helping, but she does not know about the missing money." Another pause. I placed the reflector in my coat and left it at Nero Wolf's house. Hale's people are using those devices to create a false follower. Wolf will understand the coat was planted before Miss Ward arrived. I cannot approach the police because Hale has influence through the trust and the gallery. The recording ended with a sound like a door closing. Saul looked at me. He knew the trick. He helped build it, or discovered it. I searched the case. Under the lining was a second key and a handwritten address in Queens. Mercer Avenue, room 3B. We went there. The building was a narrow brick rooming house near an elevated railway. The landlady remembered Grant. He had rented room 3B under the name Thomas Green 3 days earlier. "He looked sick," she said. "Kept watching the street. Is he upstairs?" "He left yesterday with 2 men. Willingly." He had his coat over his arm. One man held his elbow. Description: one was broad with grey hair. The other was younger. Car? Black. Sedan. Did Grant say anything? He dropped this. She gave me a matchbook. Inside, Grant had written one word: Hale. That was not subtle, but abduction rarely permits revision. Room 3B had been searched. The mattress was cut, drawers emptied, and the wastebasket overturned. Under the radiator, Saul found a torn corner of paper carrying part of an address. Ridge Farm Old Mill Road. The name meant nothing to me. It meant something to Saul. Hale's brother owns a country property near Ridgefield. Connecticut? Yes. I telephoned Wolf. He listened to the account of the ledger, Grant's recording, the empty room, and the torn address. Do not go to Connecticut, he said. Grant may be there. So may Mr. Hale's men. That is why Saul came. Return first. We could lose time. We already have. Return. He hung up. Saul smiled slightly. He thinks before moving. He also eats before thinking. But we make allowances. We reached the brownstone at 3:15. Helen, Clara, Kramer, and Andrew Latham were in the office. Latham looked offended by his presence there. Clara looked exhausted. Helen looked harder than she had 6 days earlier. Wolf listened while I reported everything. I placed Grant's recorder, the copied accounts, the draft removal letter, and the torn address on his desk. Helen picked up her father's memorandum. He was going to remove Hale. Yes, and he died the day before. Yes. Clara covered her mouth. I did not know about the money. Wolf looked at her. You knew enough to help deprive Miss Ward of control. I thought the trust was in danger. It was. From Mr. Hale. Latham said, Where do I fit in this? You dragged me here without explanation. You supplied. A convenient motive, Wolf said. Your portrait dispute made Miss Ward's judgment appear commercially dangerous. Mr. Hale encouraged your concern and allowed suspicion to settle on you. Latham's face reddened. I never agreed to frighten her. No. You merely discussed removing her from authority while believing yourself entitled to the result. Helen looked at him. He had no answer worth giving. Kramer picked up one of the false authorization letters. This is enough to arrest Hale for fraud. Not enough, Wolf said. $2 million and forged signatures? Enough to arrest him. Not enough to find Mr. Grant or prove the circumstances of James Ward's death. Helen's voice was controlled. You think Hale killed my father. I think he had motive, opportunity, and urgent need. How? Archie has not yet answered my question about lunch. I took out my notebook. Saul had checked while I drove. James Ward ate in his office. Soup, bread, and tea from a private dining service used by Hale's firm. Hale brought the tray from the conference room. Kramer said, Poison? The autopsy found none, I said. But Ward took heart medication. His pill bottle was missing after death and later found in Hale's office safe during today's trust search. Helen went white. Wolf said, Mr. Hale did not need an exotic poison. James Ward's missing heart medicine was found in Hale's office safe. Hale personally carried Ward's lunch tray into the office, and witnesses heard them arguing shortly before Ward collapsed. He removed the medicine on which Ward depended and deliberately provoked the distress that made its absence fatal, Clara whispered. He argued with Uncle James. Yes, Helen said. Andrew heard shouting through the wall. Latham nodded slowly. Hale left the office 10 minutes before I found James. Kramer stood. I'm getting a warrant. You will also send men to Ridge Farm, Wolf said. You told Archie not to go. Mr. Goodwin is valuable. Policemen are numerous. Kramer glared, then reached for the telephone. Wolf looked at me. The imaginary watcher had two purposes: to make Helen look unstable and distract us from the trust theft, and a third. Grant. Yes. While Miss Ward, her family, her business associates, and eventually we searched for a man who did not exist, the one real witness disappeared. Helen looked at the abandoned coat. Thomas Grant tried to warn you. He did. He knew I would come here. He knew Mr. Hale intended to drive you here. The coat was not evidence supporting the watcher. It was evidence exposing him. Clara said, Why not speak directly? Because he feared Hale and did not know whom to trust. He placed the truth where a detective would eventually find it. I picked up the polished strip. The device was a confession without a name. Wolf nodded. The flaw that troubled us was not a flaw. It was Mr. Grant's design. Kramer finished his call. State police are moving on Ridge Farm. Quietly? Yes. Mr. Hale? His office says he left at noon. Wolf's eyes narrowed. He knows the records were opened. He may be heading to the farm. Then he will attempt to remove Mr. Grant. Kramer started toward the door. Wolf said, "Wait." Kramer turned. "You have evidence of fraud, but Mr. Hale may deny knowledge of the forged transfers and claim Mr. Grant created them. If he is arrested before speaking, he may remain silent. You want him here?" "Yes." "You expect him to accept an invitation?" "No." The telephone rang. I answered. A man's voice said, "This is Martin Hale. Put Nero Wolf on." I covered the mouthpiece. He saved us postage. Wolf took the call. Hale. His eyes remained on the copied accounts. "Yes." A pause. "No." Another pause. "That would be unwise." Wolf's expression did not change. "Come at 9. He replaced the receiver. Kramer asked, "What does he want?" "To negotiate." "For what?" "The return of documents stolen. By Thomas Grant." I said, "He knows they are here." "Yes. And Grant." "He claims Mr. Grant embezzled trust funds and attempted blackmail." "Convenient." Wolf leaned back. "He will come because he believes he can still convert the real witness into the criminal and the imaginary watcher into Miss Ward's illness." Helen looked toward the window. "Is Thomas alive?" "We shall know soon." At 4:40, Kramer received a call. State police had reached Ridge Farm. They found Thomas Grant locked in a cellar, alive, drugged, and weak. Martin Hale was not there. Kramer lowered the telephone slowly. "Grant says Hale questioned him yesterday about the copies. Hale left the farm 2 hours ago." Wolf closed his eyes. "Good." Helen stared. "Good?" "Mr. Grant is alive. Mr. Hale is coming here. The account no one was meant to see is on my desk, and the witness no one was meant to remember can testify." Clara began to cry quietly. No one comforted her. Wolf opened his eyes and looked around the office. At 9 o'clock, Mr. Hale will explain why he stole from the Ward Trust, manipulated Miss Reed, terrorized Miss Ward, abducted Mr. Grant, and removed James Ward's medicine. Kramer said, "You are assuming he comes." "He will." "Why?" "Because men who live through documents believe every danger can be corrected by another document." Wolf touched Grant's copied ledger. "Mr. Hale thinks the crime is contained in these pages." "It is not." "Where is it?" I asked. "In the people he used." Outside, afternoon light faded from West 35th Street. The Grey Watcher had never existed, but his reflection had occupied every window Helen faced. Thomas Grant had existed, and no one had looked for him until nearly too late. That had been Hale's finest deception. He filled the city with an imaginary man, so the real witness could vanish unseen. Chapter 8. The Shadow in Wolf's Office. Martin Hale arrived at 9:03, wearing a dark suit, a pearl grey tie, and the calm expression of a lawyer who believed every room contained at least one person he could confuse. He stopped in the office doorway when he saw the company. Helen Ward sat in the red leather chair. Clara Reed occupied the yellow chair beside her, pale and stiff, with both hands clasped tightly in her lap. Inspector Kramer stood near the bookshelves instead of sitting, which left him free to arrest someone or break furniture according to need. Thomas Grant, thinner than Fritz's guest room pajamas could conceal, sat near my desk with a blanket over his shoulders and a cup of broth untouched beside him. Saul Panzer stood in the front room. Fritz waited in the hall. Wolf sat behind his desk. The polished mirror strip lay before him beside the copied trust accounts. The unburned cigarette, the rubber mirror wedge, and the typed card that had warned Helen to stop looking behind her. The black overcoat hung beside the office door. Hale saw everything. He looked at Grant last. That was his first mistake of the evening. "Thomas," he said. Grant's face tightened. Hale recovered quickly and addressed Wolf. "I came to discuss stolen documents. I was not informed that this would be a public performance." Wolf regarded him. "It will not be public." "Sit." Hale remained standing. Inspector Kramer has no authority to attend a private legal conference. Kramer said, "Try me." Hale glanced at him and selected the chair closest to the door. "I advise everyone present that statements made tonight may involve privileged trust matters." Wolf's lips pushed out. "You advise too often. It has become a method of concealment." Hale crossed one leg over the other. "Where are the documents Mr. Grant stole?" "On my desk." "You admit possessing them?" "I admit possessing copies of records showing that you diverted more than $2 million from the Ward Trust through companies without employees, offices, or services." Hale's face did not move. "Those records were fabricated by Mr. Grant." Grant spoke from beside me. "I copied them from your private ledger." "You altered them?" "No. You were dismissed for dishonesty." "I resigned when I found the forged authorization letters." Hale turned toward Kramer. "This man abducted trust documents, attempted blackmail, and has now invented a story to avoid prosecution." Kramer said, "He was found locked in your brother's cellar." "I know nothing about that." "You'll enjoy learning." Wolf raised one finger. "Mr. Kramer, restraint." Kramer muttered something and stayed where he was. Wolf looked at Hale. "You came because you believe the financial records remain negotiable. I came because confidential papers belonging to my client were stolen." "Helen Ward is your client," Wolf said. "She authorized their examination." Hale's eyes moved to Helen. She met them steadily. "You should not have done that," he said. Helen's voice was quiet. "That is what Father wrote about keeping you." For the first time, Hale's control slipped a fraction. Wolf saw it. "So, did James Ward," he said. "He drafted a letter removing you as legal advisor. He had identified false invoices, unauthorized transfers, and forged approvals. He died before sending it." Hale's expression closed again. "Mr. Ward suffered from heart disease." "Yes." "His death was certified as natural." "Yes." "Then unless you intend to accuse me of murder, this is irrelevant." Wolf leaned back. "I intend to describe your conduct. Labels may wait." Hale gave a thin smile. "Proceed." "Your difficulty began when James Ward discovered that trust money was passing through Northbridge Asset Review, Crown Harbor Consulting, and Meridian Property Control. None performed work. All eventually fed accounts linked to Hale Financial Custody. Investment structures are often complex. Theft is often decorated." Helen looked at Hale. "My father asked you for the files. He misunderstood. Routine transfers. He signed a letter removing you. He was angry. He died after meeting you." Hale's eyes hardened. "I did not kill James Ward," Wolf said. "Perhaps not by an act easy to prove. You brought him lunch. His heart medicine disappeared. The bottle was later found in your office safe." Hale uncrossed his legs. "That bottle was placed there by Grant." Grant shook his head. "I found it in your desk the morning after Mr. Ward died. You caught me holding it." Hale turned on him. "You stole it. I copied the account book that same day because I knew why you had hidden it." Kramer moved half a step forward. Hale noticed. Wolf continued before the room became physical. "After James Ward's death, control of the trust passed to Helen. She announced an independent audit. You needed 90 days. Hale's mouth tightened. 90 days. The temporary incapacity clause. If Helen appeared unable to manage her affairs because of severe emotional distress, Clara Reed would become acting trustee. She could cancel the audit, preserve your financial firm, and authorize emergency transfers. Clara looked down. Hale said, "The clause existed to protect the trust. It existed to protect Helen. You converted it into a weapon. That is melodrama." "No. The melodrama came later." Wolf looked at me. "Archie." I rose and took the long, polished strip from his desk. Fritz stepped into the office carrying a hat. He placed it on the stand above the black overcoat, then dimmed the hall lamp according to our arrangement. The coat became a tall, faceless figure beside the door. Helen watched without moving. I stood near the hallway mirror and angled the polished strip toward the glass front of Wolf's bookcase. Gray shoulder appeared behind Clara. She turned sharply. The reflected figure slid across the dark glass even though the coat remained 20 feet away. I tilted the strip again. Now the shadow appeared behind Helen's chair. Kramer grunted. Grant watched Hale. Hale watched the reflector. Wolf said, "A narrow, polished surface borrows part of a nearby image and throws it across another pane. The result is incomplete, but fear supplies what is missing." I changed the angle once more. The pale oval of Fritz's hat lining appeared where a face should have been. Helen said, "That is what I saw." "At the hotel?" Wolf asked. "Yes." "The shop window?" "Yes." "The office doors?" "Yes." Clara closed her eyes. Wolf looked at her. "You carried the smaller mirror?" Clara nodded. "Yes." "Speak clearly." "I carried it." Hale turned toward her. "Be careful." Clara's eyes opened. That warning finished what the night's questioning had begun. She faced Wolf. "Martin gave it to me." Hale's voice sharpened. "That is false," Clara continued. "He said Helen was endangering the trust. He said she had to appear unstable only long enough for the advisors to appoint me. You misunderstood legal advice. You told me where to stand. You had Marcus Dane arrange the lights. You had Robert Lane adjust the taxi mirror. You gave me the typed card." Hale stood. Kramer said, "Sit down." Hale remained standing. Wolf did not raise his voice. "Sit, Mr. Hale. Leaving now would be an admission without elegance." Hale looked toward the door. Saul appeared in it. Hale sat. Wolf said, "Miss Reed's confession establishes her part." She directed Helen's attention toward prepared reflections, planted the unburned cigarette, altered the closet mirror, and transferred construction grit to Helen's coat. Clara whispered, "Yes." Helen looked at her cousin. "Why did you keep going after you saw what it was doing to me?" Clara's face crumpled. "Martin said if I stopped, he would say I planned everything. He had copies of my letters, payments to Marcus, and the key to your apartment. He said I would lose the trust, the allowance, and probably go to prison." Hale said, "She is lying to save herself." Clara turned toward him. "You told me Andrew would take the blame." "I told you no such thing. You said the portrait dispute gave us a reason to question Helen's judgment. That was your idea." "No. You used it because it was convenient," Wolf said. "Precisely." Hale looked at him. Wolf continued. "Andrew Latham was greedy and foolish," Wolf said, "and he allowed his dispute over the portrait to be used against Miss Ward. But he did not know the watcher was imaginary and did not design the scheme. Marcus Dane knowingly built and positioned the instruments. Robert Lane accepted payment to assist with the taxi reflection. Clara performed most of the sightings. You, Mr. Hale, supplied the legal purpose, the money, and the threat that kept them obedient. You have no proof." Thomas Grant removed the blanket from his shoulders. His hands shook, but his voice did not. "I have your ledger." He placed a black notebook on Wolf's desk. Hale went still. Grant said, "Not a copy, the original." Hale stared at it. "I took it from your private cabinet before you sent men to my apartment. It records every transfer, every shell company, and every payment to Clara, Marcus, and Lane." Clara looked at Grant. "You paid me from trust money?" Grant nodded. "The payments were listed as family care expenses." Helen's mouth tightened. Wolf opened the ledger. "Page 47, he said. "I carried it to Kramer. The entries were written in Hale's hand. Dates, amounts, initials, and short instructions appeared in narrow columns. CR, travel and observation, MD, reflector equipment, RL, vehicle assistance. One line was underlined. Secure medical declaration before. Audit notice becomes active. Kramer read it twice. Hale said, "That book is forged." Grant reached into his coat and produced 3 signed bank instructions. "Then you forged your own handwriting very consistently." Hale's face had lost color. Wolf said, "Mr. Grant discovered the false accounts and the plan against Helen. He lacked confidence in the police, because you had told him the trust's influence reached everywhere. He knew you intended to send Helen here after her fear became public." Grant nodded. I heard Martin tell Clara that Inspector Kramer would recommend Wolf. Hale said. Nonsense, Grant continued. I went to the brownstone before Helen arrived. I left my overcoat in the hall and hid the large reflector inside the lining. I hoped Wolf would realize the follower was artificial. I said, why not tell Fritz directly? Grant looked embarrassed. I saw a car across the street that I thought belonged to Hale's men. I panicked. When the florist came, I left, Fritz said from the doorway. You seemed greatly afraid. I was. Wolf looked at Hale. The abandoned coat was the element you could not explain because you did not place it, Wolf said. Mr. Grant wore the oversized coat to this house, carried the polished reflector in his leather case, concealed it inside the coat's lining, and left both in the hall before Miss Ward arrived. He could not speak openly because he believed your men were watching the house. He therefore turned the machinery of your deception into a warning that he trusted me to understand. Hale regained enough control to speak coldly. Even if these financial claims are true, Hale said, they do not prove I directed the intimidation, and they certainly do not prove murder. Wolf's eyes narrowed. Your ledger proves the intimidation. Mr. Grant's recording proves your instructions. James Ward's medicine, recovered from your safe, proves that you removed the protection his heart required after he threatened to expose your theft. The law may choose its precise terminology, but the sequence is no longer in doubt. Clara said, You threatened to blame me. Your word against mine. Grant opened the tape recorder on Wolf's desk and pressed the button. Hale's voice filled the office. It was clear, dry, and impatient. Clara must continue until the advisors act. If she refuses, the apartment entry, the false notes, and the payments will establish that the scheme was hers. A second voice, Grant's, asked, And if Helen goes to Wolf? Hale answered. Then the grey man becomes proof that her fear has spread beyond reason. Wolf cannot find someone who does not exist. Grant stopped the tape. No one spoke for several seconds. Kramer said, That will do. Hale's head turned toward him. For fraud, conspiracy, abduction, and intimidation, yes. For murder, no. Helen stood. My father's medicine was in your safe. That proves nothing, Wolf said. It proves concealment. Mr. Kramer will determine whether it proves more. Hale smiled without humor. So your grand conclusion is incomplete. No. The case before me is complete. You stole from the trust, arranged to discredit Helen, coerced Clara, employed others to manufacture the Watcher, and abducted Mr. Grant when he copied the accounts. Whether James Ward's death adds murder to your list is a matter for the police and a jury. Kramer stepped forward. Martin Hale, stand up. Hale did not move. Kramer took his arm and raised him. Hale looked at Helen. You think keeping control makes you safe? The trust is damaged. The gallery is divided. Your cousin has confessed to fraud. Helen met his gaze. I would rather manage damage than live inside your protection. Kramer searched Hale, removed a small pistol from an ankle holster, and handed it to Saul. Clara began to cry quietly. Hale looked at her. This is your doing. She lifted her face. No. That is the last thing you will make me believe. Kramer took Hale toward the door. Before they reached it, Wolf spoke. Mr. Hale. Hale stopped. The most dangerous part of your scheme was not the reflected man. Hale looked back. Wolf continued. It was your invisibility. Helen searched windows, mirrors, lobbies, taxis, and streets for a Watcher in grey. While she looked outward, you stood beside the trust papers, legal authority in hand, naming her fear and offering the remedy, Allay. Said nothing. You never needed to appear in the glass, Wolf said. You needed only to decide what her fear would mean. Kramer took him out. The front door closed. For a while, the office remained still. Then Helen crossed to Wolf's desk and looked at the original ledger. What happens now? The commissioner will freeze the shell company accounts, Kramer had already explained before leaving. The trust advisors will suspend Hale financial custody. You retain control unless a court orders otherwise. Clara wiped her face. Helen, I will sign anything. I will return everything. Helen looked at her. That is for the lawyers. It was not forgiveness, but it was not cruelty either. Grant stood unsteadily. Helen went to him. You tried to warn me. I should have spoken sooner. You were the only one who tried. Wolfe grunted. Mr. Grant attempted a warning. Mr. Goodwin found it. Distinctions matter. Grant almost smiled. Fritz entered with a tray of coffee, sandwiches, and broth. Wolfe objected that sandwiches at that hour encouraged disorder, but he accepted beer. Helen sat again. The grey coat remained by the door. Without the mirror strip, it was only cloth. I removed the hat and folded the coat over my arm. What should I do with this? Return it to Mr. Grant, Wolfe said. Grant looked at it. I do not want it. Then burn it, Clara said. Wolfe frowned. Destruction of usable clothing is barbarous. I said, we can donate it. That is acceptable. Helen looked at the dark front window. Her own reflection looked back at her alone. No man, she said. No man in grey, Wolfe replied. But I saw him even when Clara had arranged. Nothing. Yes. Helen turned. How? Once fear learns a shape, it repeats it without assistance. A stranger's shoulder, a hat in a window, a shadow across glass. Your mind had been trained to complete the figure. She considered that. Will it stop? When you stop treating every reflection as testimony. That was Wolfe's version of reassurance. Fritz cleared his throat from the doorway. Dinner has waited as long as it can without injury. Wolfe rose immediately. Helen said, That is all. Mr. Hale has been arrested. The accounts are secured. Mr. Grant is alive. Miss Reed has confessed. Your authority remains intact. What remains is recovery, which is not detective work. He moved toward the dining room. I gathered the evidence into folders. Clara went upstairs under Saul's supervision until Kramer sent an officer for her formal statement. Grant remained in the office with the broth. Helen stood beside the window for another moment, then drew the curtain closed. As I followed Wolfe into the hall, I looked once at the empty coat stand. For 6 days, Helen Ward had believed a man followed her through the city. He had appeared in hotel mirrors, taxi glass, shop windows, office doors, and the dark panes of her own apartment. He had never touched her. He had never spoken. He had never existed. The real watcher had remained behind a desk, reading trust documents, arranging signatures, and deciding how fear could be converted into legal control. He had never needed to stand behind Helen. He had only needed her to keep looking there.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Midnight